if there really is God, why doesn't he come down and make things better? I don't get it. Why is the world such a mess? I'd like to offer this answer. It's been my understanding, and I was told directly in conversations with God, God's purpose and God's desire and God's intention was not to... Millions of people around the world are trying to find their meaning, so they're trying to read the right book, take the right seminar, or take the right workshop, then they'll suddenly know something more than they knew before. But in fact, meaning and purpose are not something that you find. Meaning is something you... I could, of course, be wrong about all of this, but I don't think so.
Aside from my soul. Welcome to the Inspired Evolution. It is an incredible treat to be here today. We have with us Neale Donald Walsch. Neale, how are you there, sir?
I'm wonderful.
That is the best response I've ever had to that question. Thank you so much for being here. It is such a pleasure. For those, I can't even say that those that don't know Neale, everybody knows Neale, I feel. And for those that know Neale, you know that he's the author of the Conversation of Gods series. He's done a whole bunch of philanthropic work that bleeds off the back of it, and we'll put a link to all that work in the show notes below if you do feel inspired to contribute in some way. Some people may know, may not know, he's also an actor, a screenwriter, and many of us know him as a speaker. Neale, it is such a pleasure to be here with you today.
And well, thank you. It's lovely to be here with you as well. How may I serve you?
Oh, I love that question, actually. I find myself... quoting you quite a bit from our last episode when we had you on, is oftentimes people, me being a purpose coach, helping people with leadership and finding their way, they're often asking the question around, how do I find more meaning, And I find myself quoting yourself saying, oh, you've fallen into Neale's pitfall, which, he identifies as you're thinking your life's about you and meaning for you, but your life's actually about the people that you serve. And therein lies a big part of the meaning of your life. Am I correct? Have I remembered everything you shared correctly?
Yes, I think that's a good summary. And I would add that meaning is not something that we find in any event. When people say, how can I find my purpose or my meaning in life? I tell them meaning and purpose are not something that you find. Meaning is something you create. It's something you decide on. So, and there's a huge difference because many people around the world, millions of people around the world are trying to find their meaning. So they're trying to read the right book or look under the right rock or, find maybe it's hidden behind the right tree or take the right seminar or take the right workshop or listen to Amrit's podcasts. And then they'll suddenly know something more than they knew before. But in fact, meaning and purpose are not something that we find. Because who would assign it to us? It's not like something's assigned it to us. God doesn't assign us a meaning or a purpose and then say, too bad they don't know what it is, but I'm not going to tell them. Let them just search for it for the next 50 years. That isn't the God we have.
Are you sure?
So God doesn't assign us a purpose and then keep it a secret from us. God gives us the power to decide what our own purpose and meaning is. And there's a huge difference. So what people get to do when they sit down and think about this question is ask themselves, if I could give myself a purpose, what would it be? What would my highest thought about that be? And you've expressed my own highest thought, which is that my purpose has nothing to do with me in the classic sense. It has to do with everyone else whose life I touch and the way in which I touch it. That, of course, does have something to do with me, but in a secondary sense. The
Mm.
first sense of it is that if I touch other people in a way which demonstrates that I understand who they are,
Mm.
that I see them as aspects of the divine, then
Mm.
of course it will have an effect on me as well,
Mhm.
for a
Mhm.
very simple reason, because there's only one of us. And what affects you does affect me. What touches you does touch me. What I do for you, I do for me. And what I fail to do for you, I fail to do for me, because there's only one of us.
Mm. Attaching our desires to the desires of others feels precarious for some that are tuning in. Would you say?
I'm not sure I'm saying attaching my desires to the desires of others.
I kind of know you're
I
not, but
don't,
I wanted to ask that question.
yeah, I don't attach my desires, excuse me. I don't attach my desires to the desires of others.
Mm.
I, um, I find my life's purpose in my own desire, not the desires of others.
Mm.
And my own desire is to be of service to others,
Mhm.
which is not quite the same thing that you just said.
Mhm.
Because sometimes people have desires.
Mhm.
The desires of others are not desires that I choose to serve.
Mhm.
I'll give you a perfect example, a simple example. Somebody comes into my home as a guest,
Yeah.
and they have a desire to smoke a cigarette.
Mhm.
And so I have to say to them, I understand that it's your desire to smoke a cigarette, but I want to serve you. It's my desire to serve you, but it's not my desire to attach my desires to your desires.
Mm.
So I'm going to ask you not to smoke a cigarette in my house, because there's no smoking in my house.
Mm.
So I do not share your desire that you smoke, but I'm willing to serve
Mm.
you in this moment in whatever way you feel can serve you, so
Mm.
long as your personal desires don't conflict with my own.
Mm.
And that's what I call setting boundaries. So I have to set
Yeah.
boundaries.
That's what I was hearing. It's a really healthy relationship with yourself where you're able to serve others with having a healthy set of boundaries. Because I feel sometimes, especially in the personal development world, or even, when you're spiritually inclined or of a spiritual nature, um, we can be quite lax with our boundaries in the pursuit of serving others and putting others first. Do you find that? Have you've seen examples of that in
Well,
others?
I don't put others first. I put myself first.
Mm.
But when I'm clear that what serves me the most
Hmm.
is serving other people,
Mm.
then putting myself first by serving other people works
Hmm.
out for all of us. But I don't put others first, because if I put others first, then I would allow them to smoke in my house.
Mm. Yeah, it's a great example. Yeah. Neil, I wanted to dive a little bit into the book, The God Solution, and a little bit around what was your impetus for writing the book, because you've had conversations with God, and there's more than a few parts to that series now. And then it seems like you almost wrote a book starting from scratch, saying, "Hey, maybe there isn't a God, and if there isn't, what would be the case for a God?" Can you tell us a little bit about, where you were at when you were writing this book and where this came from, this thought process?
I'd be happy to. The thing that's true for me in my life is I've been asked many times about the most important content of
Mm.
the Conversations with God books, which have
Mm.
been published now and have been out there in the world for years. The first one was published almost 29 years ago. So they've been out there for a long time.
Mm.
But people have actually come up to me at lectures and sometimes sent me emails saying, "Okay, I get that you think you had a conversation with God, but if there really is a God, why is the world such a mess?
The fair question.
If there really is a God, why doesn't he come down and fix things and make things better? How do you even know you had a conversation with a God that may not even exist? Because if there was a God, why is the world in such terrible shape? I thought that's a fair question. And I've been asked that question more than once through the years. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to answer that question in a single book, and I'm not going to have it be a conversation with God book, because some people are doubting that there really is a God to have a conversation with. So I'll just do a regular narrative book, just a first-person narrative that could address that question. So I have come to understand the answer. So I called the answer that I was given the God solution, which is the title of the book. So in the God solution, we find a summary, a narrative summary. It's not a dialogue, but it's a narrative summary of all of the most important points of the 8 or 9 Conversations with God books. There are actually 9 dialogue books. And this book, The God Solution, is a summary, basically, of the most important, the most critical, the most crucial aspects of that conversation, as well as, and I'm really excited about the last several chapters of The God Solution, chapter 24 through 28, actually share, it's kind of a short course in metaphysics, and talks about the process of personal creation and how we can use the power that God has given us to create the individual and collective solutions of our desires.
Yeah, it's I think it was really I don't want to use the word, it was intriguing. It's probably the word I want to use.
I love that word. It's a perfect word.
Yeah, because the fair question is such a fair question when you sit there and you call it the fair question in the book, is if there is a benevolent higher power that exists, what is with the given situation here on earth? Why is life not any better? And you continue to unpack that a little bit further by asking questions of along the lines of, let's say, if humanity could prove that without a doubt that God does exist, do you think that would make a difference to your life in any way? Would it make a difference in a practical matter? And then you flip that as well and say, hey, if you could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that God does not exist, do you think that would affect your life in any way? Would it make a difference in a practical matter? Do you mind sort of unpacking both of those in this example for us? Like if we could describe a world without God and what that would mean for us potentially, and a world with God and what that would mean for us potentially in building the case.
Well, I think we're seeing both right now. I think that we're seeing a world where millions of people, I'm going to use the word billions actually, advisedly, and with a world where billions of people think there is a God. And we're seeing the world nevertheless be exactly what it is, a great big mess in many, many ways. We're also seeing a world where billions of people do not believe that there is a God. So we're seeing both right now. But the real question is not, what would those two worlds look like? What would that be like in the experience of an individual? The real question is, what's the solution to all of this? If there really is a God, why doesn't he come down and make things better? What I don't get it. Why is the world such a mess? If there really is a God? And I'd like to offer this answer. It's been my understanding, and I was told directly in conversations with God, that God's purpose and God's desire and God's intention was not to disempower the sentient beings that God has created. That is, not to create a species of minions who are simply like, minions in a kingdom who have to do what the king says, and if they don't, they're going to be punished, but if they do, everything will be fine. That wasn't God's intention. God's desire was to create, I'm going to say, duplicates of itself in a sense. That is, to create sentient beings who had the power of creation in their own hands. And so God gave all sentient beings everywhere in the universe, not just here on Earth, but of course there are other sentient beings elsewhere, other intelligent civilizations elsewhere in the cosmos. And God's intention was to give all sentient beings the power to create, individually and collectively, the experience that they most desired. And thus, to experience itself, this is God experiencing itself as the creator, by allowing its creations to experience themselves as the creator of their own experience. So, but the solution is that we have misunderstood who and what God really is. So God said, here's the problem. The problem is you have defined God in a way that's utterly and totally inaccurate. And which is interesting that we would do such a thing. I mean, because, there are 4,300 religions on the earth right now being practiced.
Really?
I didn't
That
make
many?
that number up. I didn't make that number up.
Wow.
A person could Google it, could just write into the Google search engine, how many religions or faith traditions are there being practiced on earth right now? And I think it'll be like 4,275 religions,
Something
individual
like that.
religions
Wow.
being practiced right now. And so most of those religions tell us that God is in existence. It's an entity, if you please. But that this supreme entity, the higher power, we call it the higher power, is loving, but also judgmental. It judges us. And if we don't do what it wants, it condemns us, and then it punishes us with everlasting damnation.
Yeah, we become bad. Yeah.
So here we are, minions again, with the first idea, just minions in the kingdom of God, having to do what God wants us to do. And the 4,000 religions tell us what God wants us to do, but they're not all saying the same thing. Some say, you can do this, but you can't do that. Some say you can do that, but you can't do this. Some actually tell us what we can wear, the clothing we can wear, and what we should not wear. Some actually tell us what we should eat, what we should not eat. Can you believe this? When I was a child, I think the Catholic Church finally gave it up. But when I was a child, I was taught that we should not eat meat on Fridays. And so Catholics everywhere had what they called meatless Fridays, because God didn't want them to eat meat on Fridays. Some religions tell us we have to wear a certain covering over our head if we're female, because we can't allow people to see our natural hair. And if we don't cover our head with that particular piece of clothing, we will be not only condemned or judged by God, we'll actually be condemned and judged by human beings. The government will arrest you. The morality police will arrest you and throw you in jail for not dressing properly.
Yeah.
So we have all of these many, many other ideas. We could spend an hours just talking about the various commandments that we think that God has given us, way more than 10 commandments. And so, but the problem is that because we think that God is judgmental, condemning, and punishing, we've allowed ourselves to be judgmental, condemning, and punishing of others. Because after all, we're just imitating God. What could be any better than that? God has told us that we are made in the image and likeness of God. So if we really are made in the image and likeness of God, then we have the right to be condemning, judging, and punishing of others. And that's why the world is in the mess that it's constantly in. Now, God's solution is change your definition of God. Decide that, there must be something wrong here because it's not working. There must be something we don't fully understand here. The understanding of which would change everything. And what we don't fully understand is that God is not judging, condemning, and punishing. That God can be defined actually in English in 2 words: pure love. Now, Amrit, I have to tell you that when I say this in a lecture, somebody in the back of the room is sure to get up and say, "Oh, Neale, help me out. You mean I've been listening to you for 20 minutes for you to tell me that God is love? Everyone agrees that God is love. All the 4,000 religions, at least, they may have differences of doctrines and differences of, dogmas, but they
Mm.
all agree that God is love. Is this the great new message you've come to bring us? And I have to tell them, wait a minute, relax. I didn't say God is love. I said God is pure love. Now, my friend in the back of the room will say, okay, what's the difference?
Mm.
The difference is that pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. And because it demands and needs and expects nothing in return, it has no reason to judge, condemn, or punish us. And so we can now stop judging, condemning, and punishing others. And if we chose to act with each other as God acts with us, the world's mess, the world's humanly created messes, would solve themselves virtually overnight. The war in Ukraine would go away in a minute because there'd be no justification for it. We've had armed conflict, not to pick out one particular problem like in Ukraine right now. We've had armed conflict on this planet for 92% of recorded history.
Mm.
Because we keep making each other wrong and we keep justifying killing people to stop others from doing what we say is wrong. I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean by killing people for doing what we say is wrong. There are some countries in the world, whether you believe this or not, there are actually some countries in the world where if you are gay, if you are homosexual, and demonstrate that in your private life, but if you declare it to be true, you can be killed.
Yeah.
Because the religion in certain countries demands that you be killed. That your life be ended because you have violated the will of God.
That was one of the big takeaways I got from the God solution was this invitation or the question like why does agreeing upon coming up with a homogenous idea or concept or feeling or you call it pure love, which is very difficult to refute. I love that. Why does that even matter? And then you present the case in the God solution that our reality is reverse engineered from our experiences of it. And our experiences are reverse engineered from the type of behaviors we exhibit. And that our behaviors are then reverse engineered from the beliefs that we have. And so it goes from beliefs to behaviors to experiences to reality. And therefore, our reality and all that noise that's going on out there, some of it harmonious, some of it disharmonious, boils back to trying to really come home and collect ourselves around our collective beliefs. I found that was a really massive takeaway. But you also mentioned that 85% of the people on the planet at the moment do believe in a higher power, but about 80% of them don't necessarily agree on what that higher power is. And as you're mentioning pure love, I'm sure even some people tuning in are for it, and some people are not necessarily in agreement with it.
Well, the reason that they're not in agreement with it, some of them, is that they think that pure love means that you can condone and permit any kind of behavior at all. But pure love does not mean that we condone or agree with or permit or support any kind of behavior at all. In fact, just the opposite. If we really purely love another, we would stop them from hurting themselves. And we would tell them that hurting others is hurting themselves. because we are all one. So to give you a perfect example, in a marriage relationship, for instance, some people feel that if they're committed to a lifelong marriage with another, that they have to remain in that relationship, no matter how abusive their partner may be, physically or verbally abusive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been made very clear to me that that is not the demonstration of pure love. Because if I love you and you are abusing me, then I am, and if I'm staying with you, even while you're abusing me, I'm sending you a signal that says it's okay with me. It's all right that you're abusing me. And I'm actually hurting you, not supporting you, because I'm causing you to believe that abusive behaviors are okay coming from you. And you're going to act that way elsewhere in your life as well, until you finally discover that people don't want to be your friend. They don't want to be your business associates. They don't want to have anything to do with you because they feel that you're abusive. Then they wonder, well, why don't I understand? What's the problem? I'm not doing anything other than what I did with my spouse. And then you go to your spouse and say, I thought this was okay. And the spouse says, no, it's not. But you've been with me for 27 years. Well, because I made a promise to God that I would not leave you no matter what you did. But there's a difference between loving someone and allowing them to do whatever they want. I can love you, but I can promise you, you're not going to smoke in my house. It's as simple as that. My loving you does not require me to allow you to smoke in my house or to physically or verbally abuse me. Because, to repeat the point I just made, if I allow you to physically or verbally abuse me, I'm hurting you by teaching you something that is not in your best interests.
So how does pure love show up there to be the guiding light, guiding?
It explains to you why I'm not going to permit certain behaviors. Pure love shows up by saying, you know what, I'm not going to stop loving you, but I'm going to stop you from doing certain things.
That don't
I'm not
necessarily
going to
serve.
stop loving you, but I am going to stop you from doing certain things. And out of my love for you, the way, just as we tell, think of it this way. When people when people can't follow, some people say, Neil, it's hard to follow the point you're trying to make. I say, okay, think of it this way. You've got a 7 or 8 or a 9 or a 10-year-old child in the backyard outside playing. And they're playing something that you clearly see could be damaging to them. If I observe you climbing a tree, I'm not judging you for it, I'm not making you wrong for it. I'm just telling you the truth. That could hurt you. Come down from there. Just as we tell our children in the backyard. That could, sweetheart, don't do that. You could hurt yourself. You could hurt yourself. Don't play with matches. And for heaven's sake, don't play with matches in the dynamite room. So this is all very easy for people to understand. And when I explain it that way, people say, oh, you know what? I suddenly get it. I get what you're telling me. That God does not judge, condemn, and punish us, but God will tell us what could hurt us. And she will invite us to stop.
How can we see the invitations to stop in our current existence and reality, in your opinion?
We'll feel it. We will feel it internally. Most of us know, even when we're doing something relatively, simple, like a simple, what we call a white lie, a little white lie. It's not about a big deal. It's just a little white lie. We get invited to a cocktail party, and we on the phone, and we say, I'm not really feeling well tonight. I think I'm catching kind of a cold. Maybe I'll take a pass. Thank you for the invitation. And it's a lie because you're not getting a cold at all. You just don't want to go to the cocktail party. But you didn't want to tell the person that you don't want to go to their party because you didn't want to hurt their feelings. So you make an
Mm.
excuse. It's called an
Mhm.
excuse. It's a
Mhm.
made up excuse. You lied. It's a simple lie.
Mm.
But you know how you know that you know how you know? Because you feel it inside.
Mm.
So the answer to your question is we feel it inside. That's how we know. You can't escape the feeling. You know when you're doing something that's not serving you. And
Mhm.
you absolutely know when you're doing something that's not serving somebody else. Because there's a cellular memory of who you really are,
Mm.
an individuation of God. And that cellular memory will not dissolve or go away, but it reminds you. All the cells in your body know when you've told a white lie. You can't get away with it. You can fool somebody else, but you can't fool yourself.
Mm.
So that's the answer to your question. You can't fool yourself, or at least
Mm.
not for very long.
Mm. If we invite everybody to be their own theologians, as you do in their book, do we find that potentially people may feel differently about pure love? Because you do present the concept for pure love, but you do also invite people to feel into their own story and concept of what God could be. Do we run the risk of potentially not being able to reconcile those two offerings?
Well, I think we run the risk, yes, but I think that ultimately, deep in our cellular memory, we do know that
Mm.
God is needing nothing from us. If God needs something from us, like obedience, for instance,
Mm.
as an example, God would not be the supreme power in the universe because the supreme power not only does not need anything, it created everything it could possibly need,
Mm.
including vaginas and beautiful long hair on ladies.
Mm. One of the interesting things that you decided, the concept of feeling that you shared in the book was the when we're feeling a certain way, we can change our feeling after the act of having done something wrong. You mentioned those white lies. And then you said a master can change their feelings ahead of time. Can you describe that a little bit further?
Yes, well, I think that you've just said it perfectly. Yeah, but let me tell you how I learned that, how I came to be aware of it. My wife actually taught me that.
Mm.
I um, I have to confess that I have very little tolerance with people who do not serve well, even after I'm paying them.
Mm.
A waiter in a restaurant, for instance, or the
Mm.
clerk behind the counter at
Mm.
a hotel. That,
Mm-hmm.
I'm by paying for my room, I'm paying for their salary. Part
Mm.
of my part of my payment for the room takes care of their salary. So I
Mm.
expect to be served. And
Mm.
and I had a hard time with people who don't serve me well.
Mm.
And uh, and I'm confessing it's my confession for the day, but that was that way, for most of my life.
Mm.
But when I met my wife, then my fiance, we were going off to be married, and it was very joyous. We were going to fly to Las Vegas and go to one of those wedding chapels and get married. You don't have to wait. There's no waiting period in Las Vegas. You can get married in 10 minutes. So we decided spontaneously, let's get married. So we did. We got on a plane, and we got to the hotel, and they didn't have my reservation. I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh, we don't seem to have a room here for you. I said,
Mm.
that's ridiculous. I've made a reservation ahead of time. My travel agent, blah, 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 blah. I'm giving this guy a piece of my mind, letting him know how
Mm.
wrong he is and how right I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I turned around and saw my wife to be, my fiance, look at me, and she said, "Do you think there might be a better way to handle this?"
Mm.
Very sweetly, no judgment, just an observation, just a
Yeah.
simple question. And I
Yeah.
realized, yeah, she's probably thinking now, this is a guy I'm going to marry. What
Yeah.
if I do something he's not happy with? So
Mm.
I turned to the guy and I said, I'm so sorry. Let me apologize. I'm on my honeymoon. We're going to be married here in about an hour and a half, and I hope you can understand. I'm so sorry. I'm just disappointed that there's no room here for me.
Mm.
And the man was very wonderful. He said, "Oh my gosh!" He said, "Look, you're going to be married in an hour. Look, maybe there's a room. Let me just check something." He came back. He said, "The presidential suite has nobody in it tonight. Would you like to? Could we just give you as our apology to you for not having the reservation?
Mm.
Please take the presidential suite on the house, no charge, as our wedding gift to you." And I said, "Oh wow." Now, what I learned from that was this:
Mm.
things are going to happen in my life ahead of time, and I know ahead of time they're going to happen. I do so much traveling. This isn't the last time in my life that the hotel is not going to get my reservation straight.
Mm. Mm.
I can depend on it. This isn't the last time that the waiter at the restaurant is not going to serve me well. I can depend on it.
Mhm.
And this isn't the last time that even my beloved wife and I may have a disagreement that
Mm.
could change the mood of the moment. I can depend
Mm.
on it.
Mhm.
But since I know that these things are dependable and they're going to happen, I can decide ahead of time
Mm.
how I want to react, how I want to respond, who I want to be
Mhm.
when these things occur. I can choose ahead of time. And the next time that, you know, my wife is late as we're trying to leave, for the concert or the play we're supposed to see, because wives are inherently late. It's part of the biology.
Mm.
You know, I when I say let's leave at 7:30 to make sure we have enough time, I'm ready at the front door at 7:30.
Mm.
Now, my wife was there at the front door at 7:28, but
Mm.
it's just then when she decides, having seen herself in the reflection of the glass, you know, I don't think I like this outfit. Let me go change outfits.
Mm.
And so she'll go in the closet and pick out another outfit, and she won't be at the front door at 8:30. It'll be 8:40 or 8:45.
Mm.
I can promise you, this is not something that happens once in a while,
Mm.
but I make a joke. I make a lighthearted joke. I
Mm.
made that whole story up just to make a joke.
Mm.
But the point is that when I know something's going to happen ahead of time, I can
Mm.
decide ahead of
Mm.
time how I want to
Yeah.
respond, how I want to
React
react, and how I want to be.
to that
Really
delay, to
quite
that outcome.
simple.
Yeah, you also you mentioned something in the book that is sort of we're starting to encroach upon is transcending certainty for possibility. And I was hoping you could expand on that in today's conversation before we started talking about the possibility of creation and yeah, going further. So, what did you mean by transcending certainty for possibility in the God solution?
I think I'm trying to say that nothing in life is certain.
Mm.
Read that, absolutely nothing. Or as
Mm.
somebody else much more poetic than I once said, the best laid plans of mice and men. Ask
Yeah.
history.
Yeah. And I think the
So what
feeling
I've
that you're
learned,
describing, yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
So what I've learned is to not depend on the best laid plans of mice and men,
Hmm.
or my own best laid plans. That the only thing that is certain in life is uncertainty. That is
Mm.
certain. It's the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. But what
Mm.
is available to us always is the possibility of recreating both ourselves, that is the way we're feeling, the way we're acting, the way we're responding, and also recreating any moment itself, recreating our short-term or our long-term future. I often think, when I was a younger man, I thought I would become a newspaper writer at one of the really big newspapers, the New York Times, or one of the large worldwide papers, because I already thought that I was a pretty good writer. But, and I thought it was certain to happen, couldn't not happen, because I was a very good writer. And I started as a journalist at a small town newspaper in a tiny city in the state of Maryland. Well, of course, I never got called. I never got to be a writer at one of the major newspapers, the Washington Post or the New York Times or any other paper in the world, major newspaper. I never got that opportunity. So that plan that I had didn't come to pass, but the possibility of a different kind of future did. And I realize now, in retrospect, that had I actually been hired by the New York Times, I would have been a writer there for 40 years, and I never would have had the experience that I did have that produced my life as I now know it.
The body of work you contributed to.
So, for me, gratitude has replaced disappointment with regard to the events of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense at this particular juncture in this conversation as well, how you've laid that out. So the big takeaways from the book were the initial part of the book were to presume that a higher power exists. And instead of describing the higher power as this thinking thing that we think about, decide that it's an energy that we can physically feel and label that energy potentially as pure love. And then making the switch, replacing our thought from a concept of God to a feeling of God being pure love in our body, and recognizing that actually animates a lot of what we do. And even diving down into the nitty-gritty of behavioral psychology and a lot of what we do in the day-to-day in terms of reward and punishment, and how kids early on get set up for wanting to seek their parents' approval, which is a synthetic version of trying to receive like actual love, right? You can really start to feel that actually, there is a lot that pure love governs in our world, and obviously it does get corrupted in certain ways in the 3D world, through this approval, lack of approval, attachment, detachment, etc. But yeah, I think that's the big takeaway from there. You invite this process of seeing ourselves as the divine in many ways, in that if God has the ability to create, so do we. Can you elaborate on our power as a creator and potentially how to access and harness that? Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. First, let me just say that, as you indicated, I don't see God as a person. I see God as a source. And in biology, we've been talking the past 30 or 40 years about undifferentiated stem cells. 120 years ago, no one ever heard of that. But in the past 40 or 50 years, we've started talking about undifferentiated stem cells. Stem cells are cells of the body that have not yet differentiated. They've not become our, cells of our brain or our lungs or our heart or whatever, any other aspect of our being. So I see God. I see God as the undifferentiated stem cell of the universe. That is pure energy, which can take any form that it wants. If it wants to take the form of a man in a flowing white gown and a long white beard, or as a woman, with angel wings and so forth, it can take any form that it wants. But it's the originating source, the source energy of all that is, all that ever was, and all that ever will be.
Mhm.
And I see all of us as manifestations of that energy.
Mhm.
Therefore, that energy, in my opinion, resides within everything and every one of us.
Mm.
What makes a flower turn to the sun? Somebody explain to me why a flower will turn to the sun all by itself. We don't
Mm.
go outside in the garden and say to the flower every morning, be sure to turn to the sun.
Yeah, it kind of knows what to do. Yeah.
The flower just does that.
Mhm. Mhm.
How does that happen? Somebody explain to me how that happens.
Mm.
Oh, I see. It's built into the flower. I
Mhm.
see.
Mm.
So, but some people say that life is a school, that we have to learn, how to do what we need to do to survive.
Mm.
But God said to me, life is not a school. I said,
Mhm.
not a school. Many great teachers have said life is a school
Mm.
where we learn to. God said, Neale, is there a tree outside your window?
Mm.
I said, yeah. God said, is it a small tree or a large tree? So I said, large tree. It's about 25, 30 feet high, very beautiful oak.
Mm.
And God said, what has the tree learned since it was a seed no bigger than your fingernail?
Mm.
I said, well, it hasn't learned anything. It just grew into itself. God said, you mean that everything that the tree needed to know to grow into itself and become that 30-foot beautiful oak outside your window, everything it needed to know, are you telling me that I implanted that and encoded the seed with all that information?
Mm.
I said, I said, well, I suppose you could put it that way. God said, and if I so loved the tree,
Mm.
would I not all the more love you? So know that I've implanted within you all that you need to know to grow into the grandest version of yourself that you could ever have imagined. Therefore, that which I am exists within you.
Mm.
That which I am, you are in individuated form.
And so the power to create is us to connect to ourselves being a creation
Yeah, and
simply
it's a power.
humbly.
It's a power that I would call thought. What the human word that I would use to describe that power is thought,
Mm.
because thought is the exercise of the mind that takes the particular energetic of life and shapes it in a certain form, and then
Mhm.
projects it out into the universe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And one of the wonderful masters of humanity, named Jesus, made this very clear in all that he taught to all that listened to him.
Mhm.
I mean, he was walking down the street one day with a bunch of followers, his
Mhm.
disciples, and a man was crawled up to him on his knees. He was a leper, actually.
Mm.
And he said to Jesus, if you just let me touch your garment, he said, if I could just touch your clothing, I'll be healed. And Jesus turned around and looked at the man on his knees behind him, and he said, do you believe that? And the man said, yes, I do. Yes, Lord, I believe that. And Jesus responded, by your faith have you been healed. I didn't do anything here. I didn't heal you. But if you think that will heal you, then you've been healed. Because
Mm.
as you believe it, so will it be done unto you. There's a
Mm.
man named James Allen who wrote an astonishing book a few years ago called As a Man Thinketh.
Mhm.
Other books have been written on the same topic.
Mhm.
Norman Vincent Peale wrote an astonishing book in 1949 called The Power of Positive Thinking.
Mm.
Many, many, many books have been written on this topic. This is not new information.
Mm-hmm.
So if we simply decide that something is true and live according to the truth that lives within us, we will find, I'm not going to say 1,000% of the time, but more often than not, we will find that our highest and best thought about everything is what manifests in our reality. So the power of creation is nothing more than deliberate thinking, intentional thinking, or as Conversations with God put it, life proceeds out of your intention for it. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this, but I don't think so.
Because there's the thought. Oh, Neale, thank you so much for sharing yourself so abundantly here today with us. The case that you make for just a fair question in the way that the world currently is structured, there is so much opportunity for us to question whether there is a higher force that animates everything, and then building a case for, hey, maybe it's just pure love and it's benevolent and it's, treating you with the respect and love and care, that you can make the best possible world out there. The choice is yours, heaven or hell, and, let's see how you navigate this. Is a really beautiful read. And I, having been a podcast guest, have a healthy sense of skepticism, I guess, which sometimes could probably border on the unhealthy. And, I've got a really robust relationship with my own faith in some ways, but even I find times where it's like, oh, if this was going to be such and such, and why did this happen, And reading your book was really supportive, really, really supportive for me on my journey as well. So I'm really grateful for your writings once again, and not just for your writings, but also your time and energy here today and the lifetime's worth of work that informs it. So thank you so much for doing this with us here today. Thank you.
Those are very nice words to say to me, and I receive that energy gratefully, and thank you for having me on your program. I enjoyed it immensely.
Such a pleasure, Neale. Thank you so much. Inspired Evolution Tribe and audience, thank you so much for being so inspired to evolve. It is my greatest pleasure being your brother, walking home by your side. Stay inspired. Keep evolving. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment. And if you want to stay in tune for new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.